Welcome, everyone, to this deep dive into Jane Austen. I'm so glad you could join us today.
Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk, Austin.
Me too. And, we have some really cool academic sources today that I think will take us beyond the usual, surface level stuff.
Right, like you can read Austen just for the romance and all that, but
For sure, yeah.
there's so much more going on.
I've always been amazed by how Austen can be funny, but also make you think at the same time. Like, she's making fun of her characters, but also...
Kind of making fun of US too, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like she's saying, hey, reader, you might be part of this too.
Absolutely. She uses humor to critique society, like all the little hypocrisies and things.
Okay, so for someone who maybe only knows Austen from movies, what's the key why thing they should know about her life
Yeah.
to get started?
Well, she lived 1775 to 1817, so huge time of change in England. French Revolution was happening, wars, industrialization was starting.
Wow, so much going on.
But Austen focuses on this, small world of the gentry, right?
It's almost like she's doing that on purpose, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Like by showing us these everyday lives, she's actually saying something about the bigger picture.
I never thought of it that way.
And her novels may seem like all love and marriage, but they're also about class money, who gets what.
Right. All that inheritance stuff.
And all that was tied to the historical stuff going on around her. It all matters.
And it's interesting, she never married herself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how much she was maybe critiquing marriage itself, or at least what women's options really were.
For sure. And talking about challenging norms. Her use of irony always gets me.
Oh, yeah, one of the best.
That first line of Pride and Prejudice about a rich man needing a wife.
Classic. But see, Austen's being ironic there because...
It's the women who need to marry, right?
Exactly. Especially if they don't have money, it's like this huge pressure on them.
So she's flipping the script on us, making us see it from the woman's side.
Yeah. And she does this with a lot of techniques like free indirect discourse, which is a fancy way of saying...
Okay, yeah. That one always trips me up.
So think of it like this. You're reading and a character's walking down the street, but instead of just describing what they see, Austen slips into their head.
Oh, so it's like we hear their thoughts, even if they don't say them out loud.
Exactly. You get this close, intimate feeling with the character, like you're in their mind.
That's so cool. Can you give us an example, from a specific book?
So in Emma, there's this part where Emma's watching Mr. Knightley talk to Harriet Smith, and on the surface, Emma's just observing, but Austen lets us in on Emma's thoughts.
So she's maybe jealous, even if she doesn't admit it.
Right. You get those layers of meaning because we see Emma's true feelings, not just what she shows everyone else.
That's so clever. It makes the characters feel so real, so human.
Yes. We see their flaws, their struggles. It's not all perfect and romantic.
And speaking of real, another thing I've noticed is Austen doesn't really describe what people look like physically.
Oh, that's a big debate among critics. Some say it makes the characters more universal.
We can imagine them however we want.
Right. But it also puts more focus on their personalities, their inner world.
Yeah, because we have to pay attention to their actions, their words, not just how pretty they are.
Exactly. It forces us to engage on a deeper level.
And this makes me think about Austen and morality and manners, because in her world, those things were so connected.
Totally. Good manners were seen as a sign of good character.
Yeah, it all went together. And her books often show that tension between what you want to do and what society expects.
Yeah, think of Fanny Price in Mansfield Park always being judged for being quiet and shy, but she's actually the most morally good character.
Oh, that's such a good example.
Yeah.
She doesn't fit in, but she's the one doing the right thing.
Austen's saying there's a difference between appearing good and actually being good.
Right. It's not about showing off. It's about inner strength.
And her heroines may be smart and charming, but they're also tested by their choices. Do they choose the easy way or the right way?
And those choices show us who they truly are.
Exactly. And I think we should talk more about education next, how Austen shows women learning and growing despite all the limits they face.
Yeah, let's dig into that because it's so relevant even now.
Definitely. Austen was ahead of her time in some ways with how she shows women's intelligence and their desire to learn.
But yeah, they couldn't just go to university or whatever, right?
Right. Society had all these ideas about what women should and shouldn't be.
Okay, so how does Austen show them pushing against those limits?
Well, think of Elizabeth Bennet. She loves to read and she's sharp, but she also has to learn to see past her own prejudices.
Oh, that's so true. Her growth isn't just about finding a husband. It's about becoming a better thinker.
Yes. Austen's heroines go through these journeys of self-discovery and education, even if it's not formal schooling.
They learn about themselves, about the world, about love, and all that's connected.
Absolutely. It's not just romance, it's about becoming a fully formed person.
This is so fascinating. I'm already seeing Austen in a whole new light.
Me too. And we're just getting started. There's so much more to uncover as we go deeper. It's interesting. You mentioned those journeys of self-discovery. A lot of Austen's plots are what we call process plots.
Process plots, like what does that mean?
So it's this idea that the heroine starts out with a certain view of the world or her values, and then through stuff that happens, she changes, her understanding evolves.
Okay, I think I get it. So, like, could you give us an example?
Sure, let's take Persuasion and Elliot, the main character. She was talked out of marrying Captain Wentworth years ago because he wasn't rich enough or high status.
Oh, yeah, and then they meet again later, right?
Exactly. And Anna's had all this time to think about her past choices. Like, did she make the right decision? Was it really her choice, or was it society pressuring her?
So she's not just falling back in love, it's deeper than that.
Right. She's really examining her values, what she believes in now, and comparing Wentworth to other guys who maybe have money and status but aren't as genuine.
So she's like unlearning what society taught her.
Yes. And that's key in these process plots. Austen's heroines often have to confront those biases they learn to grow and find real happiness.
This makes me think about Austen herself. Like, was she trying to uphold traditional values or was she being more radical?
Yeah, that's the big debate. Some scholars say her novels reinforce the social order because the heroines usually end up married and settled.
But I feel like that's too simple. She's way too witty for that.
I agree. It's more nuanced than that. Yes, they often marry, but it's not easy getting there. Her heroines challenge norms. They make their own WN choices, even within the limits of their society.
Like Elizabeth Bennet, right? She refuses to just marry for money. She wants love, respect, and she makes Darcy change too.
Exactly. It's subtle, but Austen's showing how these women, even without huge power, can disrupt things just by being themselves, thinking for themselves.
I want to go back to something you said earlier about Austen's world reflecting bigger historical stuff, even though it seems small at first.
Yeah, that's so important. Remember, she was writing during huge change in England. Industrial revolution was happening. Old ways were being challenged.
So those country estates aren't as simple as they seem.
Not at all. Like, think about property and inheritance. Huge EE themes in Austen.
Right, like who gets the land, who has money, who's in control.
And for women especially, that was tied to marriage, right?
It's always striking me how Austen's heroines are often smart and capable, but financially they're in a tough spot.
Absolutely. Like the Dashwood sisters and the sensibility, they lose their home because it goes to a male heir. So suddenly they have to find husbands who can provide.
It's not just about love, it's survival almost.
Right. They need that financial security. So Austen's showing how romance and economics are all tangled up.
And that connects to something we haven't talked about much, colonialism.
Ah, yes. That's a big one. Even though Austen doesn't directly write about colonies, you can't ignore that England's wealth at the time was from its empire.
So even those fancy drawing rooms are connected to what was happening in other parts of the world.
Exactly. Like in Mansfield Park, the Bertrams have a plantation in Antigua, where some of their wealth comes from.
So it's there in the background, even if it's not the main plot.
And this makes us ask tough questions about Austen herself. Was she aware of the exploitation? Was she critiquing it? Or was she just reflecting the world she knew?
It's like she's making us think about those things without giving a clear answer.
Right. That's part of her brilliance. She doesn't oversimplify things. She gives us complexity, and that's why we're still talking about her books centuries later.
Okay, so we've talked about plots, heroines, historical context.
Yeah.
But I want to touch on Austen's style. Like, her dialogue is so good.
Oh, she's a master of dialogue. Her characters talk in a way that feels real, but also tells us so much about them.
I love how she can say so much with just a few lines.
It's not just about moving the plot forward. It's about revealing personalities, motivations, those unspoken desires.
Do you have a favorite example?
Well, in Pride and Prejudice, when Elizabeth and Darcy dance at the ball, they're being polite, but you feel that tension, that attraction, and that clash between them.
It's all in the subtext, those looks, the way they say things.
Yes. And Austen lets us in on that. She makes us feel like we're right there, observing these little moments.
Like we're eavesdropping on these super important conversations.
And that's where her free, indirect discourse comes in, again, even in dialogue. She blends what they say with what they think, so you get this multi-layered experience.
It's amazing how much she can pack into one scene.
That's Austen for you. She's a genius with details, with language, with showing us the depths of human nature. It's incredible, really.
It's funny because even though Austen wrote these books like centuries ago, they still feel so relevant.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's a reason she's still so popular.
What do you think that is? Like, what makes her work connect with people even now?
I think there are a few things. One is her characters. They deal with stuff that's just part of being human. Love loss, family ambition, trying to fit in. We might not live in her world, but
We get it.
right, we get it. Those feelings are timeless. And her heroines, especially, they're so strong and relatable.
I always loved Elizabeth Bennet, like her independent spirit. She doesn't let
Her-
anyone tell her what to think.
Oh, yeah, she's great. Or Eleanor Dashwood in Sense and Sensibility. So much quiet strength.
They feel like real people to me, not just characters in a book.
Exactly. And the themes Austen tackles, those are timeless too, like social dynamics, how relationships work, trying to be yourself in a world with all these rules and expectations.
It's like all that stuff is still going on today. Class differences,
Mm-hmm.
gender roles, the pressure to be a certain way.
Exactly. And Austen saw all that so clearly. She had this amazing insight into human nature, and she wrote about it in a way that's still so sharp and funny.
Plus, her writing itself is just beautiful to read, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Her prose is so elegant, the dialogue is witty. I mean, even if you don't care about the history or the deeper meaning, it's just a pleasure to read.
I love how she can say something so simple, but it just hits you, like you have to stop and think about it.
Yeah, it's like a punchline, but also really profound at the same time.
What would you say to someone who maybe had to read Austen in school and didn't love it? How would you convince them to give her another try?
I'd say don't be afraid to branch out, try different novels. They each have a different vibe.
Yeah, Pride and Prejudice is like the most famous one. But
Right, but maybe Northanger Abbey is more your speed.
Mhm.
It's this fun satire of those old Gothic novels, or Emma, which is very witty and comedic,
Mhm.
or Persuasion, which is more like quiet and emotional. There's really something for everyone.
So don't judge Austen based on just one book.
Exactly. And also don't feel like you have to understand everything perfectly on the first read. Just enjoy the story, let the characters and the language wash over you. The deeper stuff will come later.
It's like you don't want to overthink it. Sometimes you just have to let yourself be swept away.
Exactly. And as you read more Austen, you'll start to pick up on those nuances. The irony, the way she comments on society, and the psychology of her characters, it's really rewarding.
Well, I feel like we've covered so much in this deep dive. I have a whole new appreciation for Austen now.
Me too. It's always fun to revisit these books and see how much they still have to teach us.
I think I need to go reread one of her novels immediately.
I hope you do. And I hope our listeners feel inspired too.
So to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this journey into Jane Austen's world.
Yes. Her work is truly a gift that keeps on giving.
Happy reading, everyone. Until next time.